We need to get together and let our voices be heard.
This is Buffalo What's Next. I'm Jay Moran.
I'm Bridget Jaipal Valenza.
And I'm Thomas O'Neill White.
After May 14th, how can we afford not to talk about race?
About education, about segregation, about humanity.
Since the dawn of this nation, racial violence has existed.
The way we have designed our society has a big hand in what occurred in that Tops Market.
The suburban area, everywhere. We must work and teach our children.
We need to make sure that we put more funding in our programs that help prevent gun violence and more money into art.
If we're going to have some real healing, we've got to have space to tell some uncomfortable truths.
Good morning and welcome to Buffalo What's Next. I'm Lorenzo Rodriguez, your host and producer. And today we're going to be breaking down something that for many is very daunting, very complex, legal law, the world of law. And I'm joined by two ladies that are practitioners of the law. I'm joined by Gretchen Gonzalez and Maria Valeri of the Volunteer Lawyers Project. How are you ladies? Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi, great to be here.
I'm super excited to have you all here to hopefully help navigate this very convoluted field that you all chose to join and be a part of. But I really want to highlight what the Volunteer Lawyers Project is. For those that are unaware, it started now. It's in its 40th year, correct?
Yes, that's right.
Big year for the VLP. Between the Neighborhood Legal Services and the Erie County Bar Association, in 1983, they kind of came together and the VLP was born, right?
Yes, it was initially a project of the Bar Association of Erie County and Neighborhood Legal Services in 1983. And when it started, there was one attorney and two other people running the project. And then it grew so much that we decided to break off and become our own entity. And so now we are about 50 employees between two offices, one in Buffalo and one in Batavia.
And the major point here is the mission of the Volunteer Lawyers Project, which is to provide quality-free civil legal services for low-income people and not-for-profit organizations, correct?
Yes. And it's we have a dual mission, so that's the first half. And the second half is to involve volunteers in the delivery of those services. So we are a civil legal services organization, which means we provide free civil legal services to low-income people, and we do that through attorneys that we have on staff. So like I said, I have a staff of about 50 people. And through our volunteers, we have a bank of over 400 attorneys in private practice that volunteer their time to take cases through us for free for our clients.
And if I didn't mention off the top, Gretchen, you're the CEO of Volunteers to Lawyers Project. Maria, you're the pro bono manager at the VLP.
Yes.
So you're in charge of finding these attorneys, these lawyers to help in your mission.
Yes, finding them, offering them, training, mentorship, placing them with cases that hopefully they'll have a good experience with so that they'll volunteer again. So that's pro bono is a big umbrella. It's not just the volunteers. It's also helping students, placing students with internships in the hopes that they become a part of public interest law and want to come and perhaps stay involved with us beyond graduation. But yeah.
The Bar Association of Erie County and Erie County in general, the legal community has a long history of pro bono work. We're very lucky in that way in Erie County that, there are so many volunteers that we have, so many lawyers who really want to help and recognize that they have a unique skill set that can be of use to people who are, at a disadvantage and wouldn't be able to afford their services.
It's a great win-win for everybody. Because
Yes.
You're helping a necessary a part of our population that just can't afford the legal services, but you're also giving aspiring attorneys and the reps that you need, and at the end of the day, feeling good about it. I hope.
Yes, and it's an opportunity for our volunteers. Sometimes they want to volunteer in their wheelhouse, in the area that they're comfortable in, and we love that because then we don't have to give them as much mentoring. But it's also an opportunity for them to learn other areas of the law and maybe step outside of that wheelhouse a little bit and gain some new skills. And we provide, like Maria said, full training and mentorship where we're not going to just hand you a case and say, go for it.
Good luck.
Good luck. No. We're there every step of the way to help you with it and make sure that there's a good result for our clients and for the attorney that's volunteering.
Yeah, we try to make sure, too, that again, we want all of our volunteers to have a great experience. So when you do sign up to volunteer with us, if I have a case that's in your wheelhouse and it's something you mentioned you'd like to do, I don't just send it over to you. You get a phone call. What's your bandwidth looking like? This is what I have. Can you take it right now? And a lot of our volunteers, if the timing's right, yes, send it over. Otherwise, I got a trial coming up. Can you hit me up in a couple months? All that's acceptable. So I always want attorneys to know if they're thinking about volunteering, they have control over when they volunteer and what types of cases they receive. It's not just okay, here you go. So I want to make that point.
Yeah, and additionally, I always say if you have an hour, we have a pro bono opportunity for you, because we don't just do full rep cases. I mean, we love our attorneys that do full rep cases from beginning to end. That's wonderful. But we also have a lot of clinics in the courthouses and different areas where people can do what's called limited scope volunteering, and they're just there for the day, giving out real-time advice and counsel to people, helping them with their immediate issue, and then they don't take anything home. There's no homework, there's no follow-up, but they've really made a difference in that person's life that day.
And as far as the service areas, it's pretty robust what the Volunteer Lawyers Project does. I'm just going to rattle off some of the bankruptcy and debt, divorce, a lot of family law, estates and wills, housing, eviction defense, immigration. We're going to get into that prickly fields eventually, but you've got legal services for positive families and individuals, something that you specialize in, correct, Gretchen?
Yes. When I first started at VLP, I was a staff attorney in that program, and that program provides generalist legal services, so basically any sort of civil case under the sun for people who are affected by HIV and AIDS.
There's micro entrepreneurship programs that you offer for low-income folks trying to start their own businesses. Something that in itself is quite daunting for domestic residents and citizens. You also have nonprofit organizations that you service, property tax foreclosure law, tort. We're not going to get into torts today because that's the riveting field of tort defense. But just those are some of the subject and service areas that you all service, and it's great. It's a great service you're providing.
Yeah, it's something that I think that a lot of people don't recognize unless you've been in legal trouble, unless you've had an issue that comes up. We've all been inundated with the Miranda warnings that you see on the TV, on the cop shows. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be appointed for you. But that's not true in all cases. So if you're facing the loss of your home to eviction, you're not entitled to a free attorney. If you want to get visitation of your grandchildren, you're not entitled to a free attorney. If you're about to lose your home in property tax foreclosure, you're not entitled to an attorney. So that's where organizations like mine and the other 4 civil legal services organizations in the city come in to fill that gap and try to assist people.
And I glossed over name change. I thought that was, when I was first looking at everything that the VLP does, I was like, name change, huh? That sounded like a vanity service, but it serves a very vital one for the underserved populations that they.
Yes, there's a lot of different ways that the name changes come into our office. There is people who are transgender who want to change their name and their gender marker. We do that. There's also, I had a case once where there was a child whose name was misspelled on her birth certificate, and we had to do the name change to make sure that her documents were correct going forward. We recently had an immigration client who, in his home country, everybody just has one name, not 2 names, not a first name and a last name the way that we do here. And as you can imagine, with all of your governmental paperwork and things like that, just getting a driver's license and stuff like that, not having a first name and a last name becomes problematic. So we're doing a name change for him to be able to give him that first and last name.
I think one of the other areas that maybe we didn't put on the list, but people tend to not know about, is our low-income taxpayer clinic. And that's another one. When I first heard of it, I'm like, why are we we're helping poor people. Why do they owe taxes, whatnot? There's a lot of people who are in disputes with the federal government, most times because they filed a tax return, claimed a credit, got the money, and then the government has come back and said, oh, no, you weren't entitled to that credit. Well, now they owe this money back. They can't pay it. Interest and penalties are accruing. So our low-income taxpayer clinic assists those individuals through those disputes with the federal government and the IRS get that under control.
Yeah, the other thing that we've seen in our low-income taxpayer clinic over the years is occasionally there are a lot of bad actors who, commit some fraud with our clients. Convince our clients that they're eligible for some things that they're not. They'll take a large percentage of whatever refund that they get and then fly by night. So there was a couple of years ago, there was a big scam that was going through the Burmese community. And recently there was another scam that was going through our new Afghan community that was coming into Buffalo. And so we worked with the low-income taxpayer clinic in our office to remedy those problems for the individuals, but we also worked with the government to try and bring the bad actors to justice and give them as much information as we could about people who are taking advantage of our clients.
We met at the Erie County Bars Association Law Day Awards, and we were speaking about that because I'm from the land of that. I'm from Miami, Florida, which unfortunately you would hope that these bad actors wouldn't be preying on the people that need it the most. In our case down there, it's a lot of healthcare fraud, and it's folks that don't know the legal system. They don't know what their rights are, and I'm glad that there are organizations such as the Volunteer Lawyers Project that are helping curb that nefarious work. So from these bad folks, the largest amount of workload or caseload is coming in the areas of immigration and housing eviction, correct? Is that safe
immigration, housing, and family law are our biggest areas, yes.
And like I said, we got to devote an entire segment to immigration itself, because that is that's one that's constantly a conversation to be had. But as far as housing and the eviction defense, what are the major scenarios that you tackle?
Well, we're really still in a situation where there's a very high volume of cases coming through both Buffalo City Court and Erie County Hub Court. So, and a lot of that is stemming still from the pandemic. There was a huge wave of eviction cases that came out after the pandemic for people who weren't able to pay their rent during the pandemic.
After the eviction moratorium ended, correct?
Yes, that's correct. And in preparation for that, we worked with the other legal services providers in the area and the court system to create the Erie County Hub Court, which consolidated all the town and village courts into one housing part that's housed in Buffalo City Court, and cases are heard virtually. And the reason why that was important is because there were, I might get the number wrong, but I believe it was 35 town and village courts throughout Erie County, all hearing eviction cases. And there's only 5 civil legal services organizations in the county. And so it was impossible, logistically, for us to be able to serve all those people and get to all those courts. So consolidating them in one place allowed us to form, along with Neighborhood Legal Services, the Western New York Law Center, Legal Aid Bureau of Buffalo. I'm missing one.
I'm sorry. I was watching the TV behind me.
And Neighborhood Legal Services. And we formed the Western New York Eviction Prevention. Oh, Center for Elder Law and Justice. That's the one I was missing. I'm sorry. We formed the Western New York Eviction Prevention Project. And we are now in Hub Court and Buffalo City Court every day for people who are unable to pay for representation for themselves, for the tenants to be able to represent them.
That was impressive. I have notes. I have about 5 pages of notes, and you just rattled all that off the dome. That's impressive. Without Maria's help, Maria.
No, I know. I'm sorry. I just find being in this studio so
it's
interesting.
Your first time in a radio studio.
I love it.
Well, so far it's been a fantastic interview. We're going to get to more with Maria and Gretchen, but first we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back with Buffalo What's Next after this.
I'm Ira Flato. On Science Friday, we wonder about the secrets of nature and meet the scientists finding the keys to the universe, like black hole maven Jan 11.
I think it's really important as a scientist not to put a belief system first. The whole point is to explore the unknown.
Come explore with us. It's all on Science Friday.
Catch Science Friday, Fridays at 10 p.m. on WBFO.
PBS Kids fun and educational content is available wherever you are in Western New York, whenever you want. Live stream the channel at wned.org/PBSKids, and while you're there, you can play games, watch videos from your favorite shows like Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood, Molly of Denali, and Alma's Way. And you'll find resources for parents and teachers. Visit WNED.org/PBSKids today.
This is Buffalo What's Next, where we have conversations with the community about moving forward. To have your voice heard, press the Talk to Us button on the WBFO app, and we'll work to get your questions and comments on the air. Join us on Twitter @WBFO or email us at news@WBFO.org. Together, we'll have the conversations that are needed. This is WBFO, your NPR station.
We're back on Buffalo What's Next. I'm Lorenzo Rodriguez, and today I'm joined by Gretchen Gonzalez and Maria Valeri of the Volunteer Lawyers Project. It's they provide legal services to low-income people, non-for-profit organizations, smaller non-for-profits, and pro bono work for those that need it and can't afford it, as well as also to involve volunteers and legal volunteers in the delivery of those services.
Yes.
Got that right this time.
Thank you.
And as we mentioned, the laundry list of service areas that you all help those individuals with, the big ones being housing, family law, and immigration. We're going to delve into those now in a little bit more detail, but you're seeing a lot of you're also helping out the some clients who are eligible for compassion funds set up after the May 14th top shooting. Can you elaborate?
Yes, when we heard about the compassion fund and that it was being set up, we immediately recognized that some of our clients were going to have issues if they received money from that fund, because some of our clients are receiving public benefits, and public benefits have income restrictions and eligibility requirements. And so if you get a large payout, there's a possibility that you could lose those benefits
Kicks
going
you out
forward.
of other.
Right. So we reached out to the Compassion Fund and in conjunction with the other 4 legal services organizations. So that's Neighborhood Legal Services, Western New York Law Center, Legal Aid Bureau of Buffalo, and Center for Elder Law and Justice. I got them all this time.
Yes, you did.
And all together, we joined forces to be able to serve that community and give those clients advice about how to, what was going to happen to their benefits and how to maybe address that issue before they were going to receive their funding. To create, there's if, for example, if you're on SSI, you're disabled and you're receiving monies, you can create what's called a special needs trust to put some of your assets in that, and then that money is used specifically for your rent, for your groceries, and for your basic needs going forward, and it still allows you to maintain your SSI benefits. So things like that. We also got some funding, all 5 organizations, in conjunction with Center for Resolution and Justice as well, to provide some Know Your Rights trainings at the Resiliency Center. And actually that kind of morphed into, now we're doing legal clinics there. So we're there once a month to provide on-site legal advice and counsel to people with any sort of legal issue under the sun that can come in.
And let's get into it. Immigration law.
Sure.
We can consider Buffalo a border city. It's definitely a sanctuary city. We have Toronto right nearby. I recently spoke with Matt Tice. He's in charge of the Vive shelter, one of the many refugee resettlement agencies in our area, and he's just, the main thing is they're inundated with folks.
Yes.
Unfortunate asylum seekers that are caught in limbo because the process to legalize residency or naturalization is just such a lengthy and convoluted and a lot of hurdles to clear.
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear your side, being involved with our asylum seekers. What are we dealing with as far as a timeline? How does one go about getting legal residency?
Sure. So before I answer that question, I just want to say, a lot of people don't understand why immigration is an issue in Buffalo. It's an issue in Buffalo because we have the immigration court here in Buffalo, and that court hears all cases in New York State outside of New York City. So
Gotcha.
all the cases are coming through Buffalo at some point. And, we also have a rich history of welcoming immigrants in Buffalo, which is wonderful. As you've seen in the news lately, I'm sure our population grew for the first time in 2021 because we were welcoming people from other countries. So people think that it's because we're on the border with Canada and it's people getting caught at the border with Canada, but it's really not. People come in through all different aspects. People, overstay their visas, or people come in through the southern border, and they end up moving either to where they have family here, or they've heard something about Buffalo and they want to be here, or they get shipped here by the government or by some of the other states that have been sending people to New York City, and people end up leaving New York City and ending up in Buffalo. So it really is a Buffalo issue. And so that's the first thing I want to say. So at VLP, we have both a detained and a non-detained program. Our office in Batavia is solely immigration. It's about half of what we do, and we have a public defender style project there that represents everybody who's detained in the federal detention facility out there facing removal. We also have a non-detained program in our Buffalo office that's funded primarily through a grant from the Office of Victims of Crime, which funds our work that we do with human trafficking victims. And we also have a grant through the Office of Victim Services, which is for crime victims, which ends up being a lot of domestic violence victims that we help in that project. But in addition to that, because we are the Volunteer Lawyers Project, we're able to serve a lot of other immigration cases by relying on our volunteers. And so I'm going to let Maria talk more about what our volunteers do and our new project in the immigration court.
Yes. So right now, with immigration, even for the non-detained population, there's affirmative filing cases and there's defensive filing cases. So there are people who are already in removal proceedings. They need representation, and any filings they do would be considered defensive filings. Those tend to be more time-consuming and require court appearances. But there are also a lot of affirmative applications that our clients need to file. For example, if they've already had a green card for the amount of time they were required to have it and they're now ready for naturalization, we need attorneys to help represent them and help them get their United States citizenship. For people who maybe were granted asylum, 1 year goes by, it's time to file for their green card. So we need attorneys to help them through that process. We have trainings and mentorship for the volunteers that come forward to help these clients. And I can say with the affirmative applications, just really rewarding work. There's nothing like handing somebody's green card to them for the first time, or
imagine
being at their oath ceremony when they're sworn in as a U.S. citizen. It is amazing, and they're clients that they never forget you. Every holiday, birthday, you hear from the clients that you've represented over the years. You become a part of the fabric of their life. And in the case of asylum, if you represent somebody and they're granted asylum, you've changed generations, the future generations of their family, and they appreciate that in a way you can't imagine. So
yeah, but to speak about the backlog that you mentioned, we heard recently that the court here in Buffalo has a 15-month backlog.
Wow.
So it's a long time for people to wait. And Vive, the shelter that you were speaking of, is at capacity.
It's them. There's Journey's End also, that some others that are helping.
All of us are pretty much at capacity.
And they're all kind of in the same place.
But that's why we rely on our volunteers and why we want people to volunteer for this. Like Maria said, these are feel-good cases. You're really changing somebody's life when you're taking an immigration case. And recently we started a clinic at the immigration court. So you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it's wonderful. The court actually has been, asking for help dealing with their backlog as well. And the best pro bono programs I've learned since I've been doing this are ones where we have the volunteer attorneys, we have our program, and then the courts get behind us. And all together, it's amazing what we can accomplish. So the courts really wanted to help us, which would in turn help them bring pro bonos in, draw attention to the issues, and kind of help them streamline. So we are there once a week on Thursday mornings. It's a day now where both sitting judges have their master calendar dockets running. These are people who are appearing for the first time or second time before the judge. And the judges are able to say, if you need help finding an attorney, if you'd like some direction, go down the hall after your hearing and meet with the Volunteer Lawyers Project. So it's a nice way for us to interview them, screen them for relief, and then work with our partners under this grant in Rochester and Syracuse. And, we make referrals to them, and we're able to say, this couple qualifies under the Cuban Adjustment Act. So they know that this relief screening's been done. They qualify, find them a pro bono. That's an easy lift, and then there's also so it's kind of, it's a way that we refer to each other, but we're able to do it now with more detail and more efficiency. That in turn is helping the court, because if we make the referral, we find them a pro bono, then by the time they come back for their second master, they're ready to proceed. They're not asking for additional time. And a lot of people will show up and all they need is a change of venue. They may be already moved out of state. They came back to Buffalo for their hearing. They don't want to have to come back to Buffalo again. So the judges have worked it out with us where they'll send them our way. We'll help them do the change of venue. And then they can have it all done and the case moved to the court where they now reside while they're there. So it's helping everybody.
Yeah. So I'm sorry.
I was going to say, sometimes it's the smallest little detail that goes such a long way.
Definitely.
Like a change of venue and something you wouldn't know. I wouldn't even know how to begin to ask for a change of location or venue for adjudication. So
exactly, and you're an English speaker and you
right.
live in this country and have some semblance of understanding of what the legal system is and what the government system is. These are clients who are, English is not their first language, and they're coming to a new country and they don't understand the systems. So really, not having representation is part of what's slowing down and making the backlog, because they don't know how to proceed. The court can't tell them how to proceed. They need representation to be able to do that, and that's where we come in.
I think I saw you all helped out clients with over 34 different languages.
Yes, and that's not just our immigration clients. That's our civil legal services clients as well.
Gotcha. And that's got to be, how do you navigate that language barrier?
Well, we work with the International Institute of Buffalo, and they provide, interpretation services to us. We also have some online services that we utilize in that way. And we have a lot of attorneys in the office who speak different languages as well. But it has been a stumbling block for some of our volunteers because it does take a little bit more time. Every time that you're meeting with a client, you have to have an interpreter there to be able to speak to that client. And so we really would love it if we had some more volunteers who were able to work with us and get through that barrier. We will pay for and provide the interpretation services. You just have to be there with the client to do the case and do the work.
Would they speak with Maria, or?
They would speak with Maria.
Yes. And I make sure that, when they get a referral, it's complete with that information. And I think that's another thing, real quick, if I can. Mm-hmm. When you do get a referral from VLP, whether it's an immigration case or family case, whatever it may be, we've done all of the background work for you. We have all the documents that you're going to need. We have the filing fees up front. You get a full referral that you're able to sit down with, review all, and be ready to meet with the client. So we don't ask you to waste your time doing that sort of stuff.
The days are the minutes and hours are already numbered for when you're a lawyer. I assume you have your days backed up already.
Yes.
It's really just, if you have that, like you said, that 1 hour or two that you can spare, it will go a long way.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
I'm speaking with Gretchen Gonzalez and Maria Valeri. They're with the Volunteer Lawyers Project. We're kind of diving into all the legal hurdles that are marginalized and underrepresented communities here in Western New York face. They're helping by providing pro bono work to those members. And Maria, what you mentioned about immigration, it hits home to me because my parents were Cuban refugees. They came in 1980, and fortunately, us Cubans got a good shake. Don't get me started on the unfortunate situation with the Haitian population that don't get that same luxury that we do, and that's a conversation for another day. But
right.
Me personally, I saw the troubles that my parents faced just getting. They had their green card and they wanted to become legal citizens, and that in itself, I challenge anyone on the street to take that test, because there's a whole process there. There's a test that sometimes is not in their native language. It's learning things that we learned in civics back in 8th grade that we could all benefit from getting a refresher. But do you feel that a lot of the logjam that we're seeing in immigration law and the processing of cases, is it because we have so many barriers or hurdles that immigrants have to clear, or is it just the numbers? Is it?
I think with anything, it's a little bit of all of it, right? I don't want to say we have too many hurdles, because at the same time, those processes are important, the vetting that has to be done and the testing and all of that. We don't want to take any of that away. But there just aren't enough people to manage the flow and the number of people that need the assistance. So, I guess at the end of the day, right, it comes down to money like everything else does. But
I think providing people with representation in immigration proceedings would go a long way to fixing the problems. And there is a bill that's been tossed around the New York State legislature, the ARA, which is the Rights Council for people facing with immigration problems, and but it hasn't gotten much traction. So there are some groups that are working towards that, and we hope that someday we'll see that happen.
And as far as particular populations, VLP has been working alongside the Afghan refugee population that back in, I think, August of 2021, we all saw the images from Afghanistan where everyone just kind of tried to get out of however possible. We have a large segment of that population here in Buffalo. Is that correct?
Yes. So after the fall of Kabul, over 70,000 people were evacuated from Afghanistan by the U.S. government. 600 of those landed in Buffalo. They landed in Buffalo in December of 2021. They were first brought to military bases where they were kept there for a little while because there was, it was during COVID, there was COVID outbreaks and things like that. So they didn't actually get here until December. And they were brought in under humanitarian parole, which is it's a status that allows them to be here, but it's not a status that provides a pathway to citizenship. And they were given that status for only 2 years. And so the best way forward for most of these clients was to apply for asylum. Because it would allow them not only to get status for themselves, but also to bring over their family members that they may have left in Afghanistan. So you can imagine 600 people. That was a very large undertaking. And the 5 refugee resettlement agencies were really wonderful and really hit the ground running to deal with this big influx when they first got here, getting them housed and really, getting them the basics of life to be able to stay here. And then in about May of the following year, April or May, the International Institute of Buffalo reached out to VLP and said, we these people need legal help. What can you do? And we were able to train up a large cohort of volunteers. Hodgson Russ was the first firm that jumped on board. They agreed to take 20 cases right out the bat. And by the end of it, we had served over 100 of those clients in filing for asylum. Now, this goes back to the backlog issue. The government had initially said that those applications for asylum were going to be processed within 150 days. It's been well beyond 150 days
and
now.
We're still in limbo. Some of these folks are
still in limbo. There was actually an article in the Buffalo News this morning about it. It's happening not just in Buffalo, but everywhere. Of those people that we applied for, we've only gotten one decision.
Wow.
And it was for a 14-year-old who came over.
Derivative, right.
Yeah.
And it's causing more work now because the time is coming where they will have been here for 2 years, so their parole is going to end, which means now they need to renew their work authorization. So, sitting on my desk now is a pile from IIB that helped get the signatures and everything. And all of those extra hours of work on everybody's behalf just to continue this, where if the approvals had gone through when they said they were going to be through, it would have saved us all of this work and worry,
Yeah, and these are people who are here because they were helping our government in Afghanistan. So they have, been ripped out of their country and brought here because they helped us, and their lives are now in danger back in their home country. It's a very sympathetic group of people. I think that everybody can get behind that. They were fighting with us, and that's what got them in the situation that they're in. And it's very disheartening to see that they're in limbo for so long. I mean, that's another thing. There is the Afghan Adjustment Act that had been tossed around Congress, but it hasn't gone anywhere. So that's something that could solve the problem if our elected representatives, so chose.
It's also taking a really long time to get any reunification with their families. A lot of these men, especially the ones that were scooted out of the airport those first few days, they didn't have time to go back home and gather their families. So they've left wives and children behind. And while they needed to leave and be here for safety, they also didn't want to be here and didn't want to have to leave their families and end up, in this situation.
Yes, and their families are in danger back in Afghanistan,
right,
because they're known to be, that their family member was fighting with the U.S. for the U.S. I should say.
It's truly unimaginable circumstances. Like I said, I felt like my folks had it made, and you hear all these other stories, and it just breaks your heart. With Matt Tice, real quick before we go to our last break, he mentioned other populations coming from Ghana and from South America. Where are you finding another chunk of the population coming from to Western New York?
It really ebbs and flows depending on what's going on. Maria, what are you seeing at the court?
We're seeing everything. We're seeing people from Russia, obviously people from, the Latin Quarter, the Southern Quarter. We're still seeing Afghan people coming in that left the country but weren't able to leave at the time when the U.S. was able to assist leaving. We are seeing individuals from all over Africa. So it really, it's just all over.
All over. Well, we will continue with Gretchen Gonzalez and Maria Valeri in just a bit here on Buffalo What's Next. We'll be right back after this.
Don't miss Fresh Air with Terry Gross, weekdays at 7 p.m. on WBFO.
Did you know that WNED PBS is always working on great new local shows for you to watch? Documentaries like Kleinhand's Gift to Buffalo, which tells the story of Buffalo's music hall.
The hall is very intimate, and that intimacy makes everyone who comes in here feel a part of our family.
Fun and educational series like Compact Science.
Believe it or not, peppers are technically fruits.
And Shakespeare's greatest hits, featuring some of his best-known soliloquies and monologues.
We are such stuff as dreams are made of.
You can watch them all on our website at wned.org/local shows. While you're there, check out the show pages and mini websites for additional content such as bonus features, photo galleries, and lesson plans. Find it all at wned.org/local shows.
Music can not just help and heal, it can also shape who we are and how we interact with the world. I'm Carl Shalahorn with Mindful Music. Join me every Saturday at 4 p.m. here on WBFO, your NPR station.
Learning in the Wild. I'm Bob Hershon, and this is Science Update. Despite our lack of feathers, we share the ability to learn our vocalizations with songbirds. Now researchers have demonstrated for the first time that young birds in the wild can learn from recorded songs. University of Windsor ornithologist Dan Mennel and his team played recordings of savanna sparrow songs through loudspeakers to young birds on Kent Island in eastern Canada. The recordings were of songs that had never before been heard on the island. When they reached adulthood, a third of the songsters had learned the new songs.
The first bird to open his beak produced a song that was a near perfect match to the sounds that we were playing through our loudspeakers.
The researchers write in Current Biology that the birds learned best if they heard the songs as babies and again as young adults. I'm Bob Hershon for AAAS, the Science Society.
This is Buffalo What's Next, where we have conversations with the community about moving forward. To have your voice heard, press the Talk to Us button on the WBFO app, and we'll work to get your questions and comments on the air. Join us on Twitter at WBFO or email us at news@wbfo.org. Together, we'll have the conversations that are needed. This is WBFO, your NPR station.
Welcome back to Buffalo What's Next. We have a few more minutes here with Gretchen Gonzalez and Maria Valeri of the Volunteer Lawyers Project of Buffalo. I just want to kind of some surface stuff, educate our listeners who might not be directly needing the services, but what are some common legal tips, recommendations that you find are not so common? So something that in your line of work you see a lot and I should know.
Honestly, the biggest thing I can say, and it sounds so simple, but it's don't ignore your court papers. People, you get bad news in the mail. It's like that bill you don't want to pay and you put it aside and you're like, I'll think about that later. And then all of a sudden you've missed your court date. And when you miss a court date, you get a default judgment against you. And that's really, you're really behind the 8 ball and trying to claw your way back to getting to where you need to be. So really, pay attention. Don't put it aside. Really, go to court when it comes up, or call us, or call an attorney if you're not eligible for our services. The Bar Association of Erie County has a lawyer referral program that, if you don't know where to start, that's a good place to start. If you need to hire an attorney.
That's a good point, because one thing I wanted to ask is, how do you go about vetting or screening for your clients? Is there
So we
procedure?
We have a variety of different ways that people get to us. We have our general intake lines, a phone line you call. We will get you to the right person who will do an intake and see if you're eligible for our services. We also have a number of clinics that are in the community. We have our family court help desk that's right in family court, right across the way from petition processing. So people who are there to file petitions can come over and we can read over your petition, make sure that you're doing it properly, and give you any advice and counsel that you may need that day. And we also have, a number of partnerships with organizations in the community, service providers in the community, and they refer cases directly to us.
I know Say Yes is one of those partners.
Yes, we've had a partnership with Say Yes for a number of years. We used to have legal clinics right in the courts, and then over COVID, it kind of morphed into, we've started doing these Know Your Rights trainings with Say Yes.
It's a YouTube series, right?
It's a YouTube series, and it's on Facebook Live when they first come out, and they've been really popular, very well attended. Things like, what do you do if you get, if you get a non-payment notice, if you're about to be evicted, how do you go about filing for child support, things like that, and real basic issues to give people the information to get the job done.
And I'd be remiss in asking, how did you find your calling? How did you get to being where you're at right now? How can you quickly summarize that?
I'll quickly summarize the last 40 years. I've always worked in nonprofits. I was doing social work before I was a lawyer. I worked at Crisis Services in their outreach program. And then there's always been a kind of culture of volunteering in my household. My father was immigrated here from Colombia, and he was a doctor. And it wasn't until he passed away that I had to go through his estate documents to realize that he really was serving a low-income population in his service. He was serving a lot of in his practice. I mean, he was serving a lot of clients who were on Medicaid, and it made perfect sense to me once I figured that out as to why all of us, my brothers, and my brother was a public defender for a number of years before going to work for the Department of Justice in their civil rights unit. My brother is a middle school teacher. We're all very much in the helping profession, so it's kind of built into me from the beginning. And once I found the law, it was really everything just kind of clicked in. But Maria, you have an interesting story as to how you ended up at VLP.
Yeah, I worked for private practitioners up until I've been at VLP a little over 7 years now. And I got really burned out, was really unhappy in my job, in my life overall, felt overwhelmed and underwater. I did a mission trip to Africa, to Ghana, actually, to kind of reset and get perspective. And it did that and more. I came home and kind of downsized and reprioritized my life, and that included leaving the job and taking some time off and realizing there was this whole public interest part of law. It wasn't the law I wanted to leave. It was just the way I was doing it. Yes. And so I luckily I got into VLP right away, and I've never been happier.
well, I'd be a bad host if I didn't let you offer opportunity for aspiring lawyers and those studying law to get in contact with the VLP. How can they do that?
Yes, thank you. Call, ask for Maria, email me. We have an online submission form if you're interested. This goes for young attorneys that need experience, experienced attorneys who want to help, or even experienced attorneys who want to learn a new area of law. I can help you with any of it. So please, get in touch.
Yeah, and for those of you who are not attorneys who want to help us out,
yes,
we have a couple of venues for you to do that as well. We have a young professionals board called our Rising Champions for Justice, and that's not just attorneys; it's anybody who wants to help us, continue our mission. Those we accept applications for that in the beginning of the year in January for our new class coming in, and that group is actually holding a fundraiser for us on June 21st at Soho downtown, and it's going to be on the roof. Hopefully we'll have a nice weather. It'll be outside, and there'll be food and drinks and basket raffles, of course.
That is very much a Buffalo thing. I've already realized the basket raffle is a necessity.
Yeah, everybody loves the basket raffle.
Yes, and the past the baskets that this group puts together are amazing.
Phenomenal. I think we have one of the big ones that we have is a membership to the Albright Knox that we're going to be raffling off.
That's a hot ticket this month.
We have a lot of different gift certificates to places around town. Come out. It'll be a really nice time.
And the event's called?
It's called Beers for Volunteers.
There it is.
Beers and Volunteers.
You mentioned it. I was like, I was waiting to hear it. It's a great name.
Beers and Volunteers. Yeah, it's just a good time to come out and meet some people, have some drinks on the rooftop, and support a good cause. We also have every year we have our Champions for Justice Bash. This year's a special year because it's our 40th anniversary, and we'll be having that party at Resurgence Brewery down on Chicago Street on October 29th, which is a Friday. And same kind of thing, it's a good night to come out. We actually recognize our stellar volunteers and give out awards at that event, but it's not a stuffy awards ceremony. We do the awards ahead of time, very quickly in the beginning. No speeches, no long time sitting there listening
monologues.
To me, nothing like that. We just give out the awards and then it's a big party. So we would love it if people would come out to that event, or if you want to sponsor either one of those events with reach out to us. We'd be happy to set that up.
And for those of us that maybe don't speak another language or can help with translating services or don't have a law degree, what would be the recommendation for just Joe Schmo off the street to help all these segments of our population that desperately need it? Is it some form of law reform? Is it just, what is it?
I mean, there's so many different areas that you can help just as a layperson, as not a lawyer. Like I said, you can support us. You can just keep your mind open and stay informed, I guess is the big thing. There are a lot of pushes through the legislature and calling your elected officials and saying, I support representation for people facing eviction. I support representation for people facing deportation. To let the elected officials know that there is a groundswell of support for these issues and that people do need representation in these areas.
Agreed. I would just add, be careful of everything you read on social media. A lot of the news channels, even our local ones, are starting to separate fact from fiction. Those are pieces that are worth paying attention to when they're dealing with, issues that we're all reading about in the news and whatnot. I think it's, again, staying informed, but being careful that the source of the information you're getting is.
Are you seeing
also...
that with the population that you assist? Is there any misconceptions there?
Yeah, when the whole news broke that we might be getting some migrants from New York City, there was I was very proud to be a community member of Erie County that day, both for what Mark Poloncar said, and also because we got a call that day from Channel 2 News and said, can you bring somebody on who can tell us the difference between what is an asylee, what is a refugee? Because there's a lot of misinformation out there and people don't understand, if they should be upset or not, and they don't understand the issues. And so one of our, Carrie Battenfeld, our supervising immigration attorney for Buffalo, went on the news and did that. And we've had we also have a series that we did back in 2017. It was called our Immigration 101 series, which basically did the same things. Like, what does it mean to be a refugee? What does it mean to be an asylee? You know, can you just get citizenship if you marry somebody? You know, things like that come up all the time. What, you know, at that point in time, there was a lot of people using the term anchor baby. Like, what does that mean? And is it a thing? And so
it's not.
It's not. And so we have this series of videos that is going to be on our social media. Again, we're going to rerun it on Immigration 101 that really breaks it down and gives you, you know, the facts, the definitions. Like, what are these things? What do they mean? And we did that in collaboration with the Rise Collaborative. They helped us do that, and we were funded by Follow the Hummingbird to do those spots, and we're really proud of them. So I say watch those. You know, keep yourself informed. Really get the information that you need.
And I feel like, I know the answer to that, but is it UN designation, asylum-y, or refugee? And just
the
real
difference
quick.
really is that refugees apply for their status when they're outside of our country, and asylees apply for that. You have to be on U.S. soil to apply for asylum.
I see.
So when people say, you know, these asylees are here illegally, they're here lawfully. They lawfully requested a status of the U.S. government.
Well, once again, I'm with Gretchen Gonzalez and Maria Valeri of the Volunteer Lawyers Project. We have about 3 more minutes with you all, but you mentioned the housing helpline and all the other services that you provide, the clinics. What's the best way to reach out for those services? Is it a website? Is it
We have, well, like I said, there's many different ways to get to us. We have an online portal on our website that clients can go to and ask for help. We also have our phone line, which is 847-0662, that you can call, and they'll get you to somebody who can do an intake. And again, we're out in the community all the time doing outreach and at the clinics that we have.
And lastly, this is the big overarching question that we tend to ask on the show. It's the name of the show, but we're seeing a lot of, the last year was very tumultuous, to say the least. We're a year removed from the top shooting. We're seeing influx of migrants from New York City and other places. What does Buffalo need next? What do we need? Where do we need to divert our efforts and our energies to improving our
Well, that's a huge question. I really think that, you know, we are the city of good neighbors, right? And when we come together and work together in collaboration with each other, that's when we do our best work. And I think that's really what needs to happen. You know, I'll give you an example. When, like I said, you know, we got 600 Afghan evacuees back in December of 2021. The community came together and raised a lot of money with the resettlement agencies to be able to help that community. And we were the beneficiary of some of those funds to be able to do our piece of that work. And so it's really all of the organizations coming together and, you know, our citizens coming together and saying, what can we do to help? You know, whenever it may seem silly, but whenever I send my kids off to school, I say to them, okay, so are you going to be a helper today? And I really think that that's what we all need to ask ourselves. Are you going to be a helper today?
Maria?
Yeah, I just think what's next for Buffalo? I mean, hopefully with, you know, VLP and the other partners that we have, that we all continue to be able to do what we do with bigger budgets and more money so we can hire more people. And just continue the reach and continue fighting for access to justice for all of us.
Well, I tip my hat off to you both because your group is definitely doing that in tenfold. Like I said, as a son of immigrants, I can't thank you enough for what you're doing to others that are in pretty dire straits. So once again, this is the Volunteer Lawyers Project. You can reach out to your website, which is
ecbavlp.com. So that's Erie County Bar Association Volunteer Lawyers Project.
Gretchen Gonzalez, Maria Valeri, I thank you so much for joining us on Buffalo What's Next today.
Thank you for having us.
You've been listening to Buffalo What's Next, and this is WBFO and WBFO HD1 Buffalo, WOLN Olean, and WUBJ Jamestown, your NPR station. Tomorrow on Buffalo What's Next, we're going to have Angeli Preston. She'll be speaking for members from SNUG. So join us tomorrow on Buffalo What's Next, as you always do, from 10 to 11 on WBFO, your NPR station. I'm Lorenzo Rodriguez, and thank you for listening.